Hello and welcome to Access Chat. I'm delighted that we're welcoming back to the show Jourdan Saunders, who we had on just over 2 years ago. Jourdan is the CEO and founder of The Resource Key, which is a marketing comms agency featuring and focusing on inclusive branding for people with disabilities, making sure that they're fully included. So Jourdan, welcome back. Obviously, a lot's happened in the intervening 2 years. So tell us a little bit more or revisit what the resource key is, and what you're doing. And then let's dive straight into all of the exciting stuff that's happening now.
Yes, thank you for having me. And I will start with a visual description. I have brown skin. I'm wearing a black and red headset. I have this black sweatshirt on that says Friday I'm in love, and it has like gold shimmer to it. I'm sitting in my office in a black and white chair with books in the background. Thank you so much for having me. The resource key, we're still focused. The goal and the mission is really to ensure technology that's being built out is inclusive and accessible and leaves no one behind. Marketing has been the core of what the resource key does, because a lot of times there's a lot of great initiatives that happen, but no one knows about it. So I think marketing and really great technology that's accessible and inclusive go hand in hand, in order for it to be able to, the information to spread and get into everyone's hands that need it and could be able to utilize it as well. So that would be why I'm still focused on marketing and with the overall mission to ensure no one's left out.
Excellent, thank you. And before we started recording, we were talking a lot about AI. Obviously, it's a topic of conversation for everybody. It's lots happening in the world of AI, including boardroom coups, revolutions, counter-revolutions, particularly with some of the big AI companies. But also, there's a lot of discussion around AI in terms of inclusion and exclusion. And Deborah, I know, jokes about, I love it, but it's going to kill us. But there are all sorts of different angles at which we could talk about this. And I know that just before we came on air, we were talking about different types of jobs and new jobs that potentially come up as we move into the age of working with new technologies. So people are scared, that AI is going to take their jobs. But this happens with all new technologies. So you have job destruction, but you also have what we call job displacement and replacement. So some jobs will go, not that many actually, but then you'll get some that are moved and become transformed, and then you get the sort of replacement of jobs as completely new roles get created to deal with the technology. And I think you've been talking about some of those and how you talk a lot in terms of marketing and conversation. Well, we're in the world of conversational AI, so maybe you'd like to talk a little bit about your views on that and the opportunities we have. Yep.
Yeah, sorry. So I look at a lot of different layers. I can think of as having a speech language pathology background. There are some colleagues that I know that have gone into like conversation designer. So if you're interacting with a chatbot, a lot of the chatbot flow and the conversation that's happening had to happen by someone inputting that information of how the conversation would flow. So a lot of speech language pathologists have shifted into that area. And that's just one example. So I really see back, years ago when I first started in the field of speech language pathology, everything was very disconnected, and disconnected, I say, in the form of there wasn't as much overlap as there is now. I was speech language pathologist, someone that was in tech was in tech, someone that was in marketing was in marketing. Now, at my business, I see a lot just going to conferences and talking to different people. Now technology is so much a part of everyone's industry. So it's no longer you're in the tech field, I'm in marketing. It's all interconnected. And I think that's huge when we're talking about systems, jobs, because what you said too is huge. Yes, there probably are going to, the reality is there are going to be a lot of, with AI being so much at the forefront, there's going to be a lot of jobs leaving, but there's also new jobs that are happening and forming as we speak. But I think the key is really just as we create pipelines for job opportunities, having that care to be able to consider the people that may not be utilizing the technology or interested, to be able to make sure there's pipelines as well for other opportunities. Whether you're really into AI and you're able to adapt and shift and find new opportunities, or whether that may not be something you're not interested, you want to do something similar to maybe you're doing before. So using the technology to be able to leverage that, but creating these pipelines so that no one's left out. I think this is an inflection point. I think this is a very disruptive moment we're in to be able to build better, to be able to build fresh and new, whatever word you want to use. But I think it's also, we have to go with caution and care, because in a rush for companies to be the first to create or implement something, I hesitate to say, a lot of times when we're in a rush to do things, sometimes it can be a little bit scary, because that's where there may not be, you may be implementing the same types of systems that left others out previously. So I see this as a very big moment, and I feel that we can really think big in terms of how we can utilize the technology, but I also see it as a moment where we need to take caution and care when we're, creating new systems.
Well, that's I love these conversations, I would just say, and I know that you and I recently had a conversation about this, and I do think we need to be thoughtful. I agree we need not to rush, but the reality is people are going to rush, and I mean I get it. It's just sort of also what humans do, but I think the one thing that is discouraging me, and I know that's the wrong word to use, but that is the word that I'm going to use, is that I see some amazing opportunities, but I don't see in people considering these opportunities in ways that I think as meaningful ways as we could. And let me ground that comment. So, for example, I was talking to a group the other day that helps people with intellectual disabilities in the United States find employment. And they were talking to me about these great training programs they had done so that, so my daughter, Sarah, with Down syndrome could become a dishwasher, or she could become, a bagger at a grocery. And as I get these jobs, it does discourage me, because I believe, and I know for a fact, that my daughter really has other aspirations for her career and her work life than just the standard, boring, easy, check the box list things that we see happening now. And so I was talking to this group and I said, well, what are you thinking about when it's coming to AI and some of these opportunities? And they just sort of looked me blankly and they're like, well, we haven't even thought about that. And so I think, first of all, I'm a little discouraged that we are not looking at this as an opportunity to rethink everything, as you just said, Jourdan. And I think that enough of us voices need to continue to say, wait a minute. But I also want to make a comment to something else you said, Jourdan, which I agree with, but I just want to tweak it a little bit in that you were mentioning jobs going away and things like that. And I know we're talking a lot about, oh, your jobs are going away. But actually, what I think happened at first, I don't know if y'all agree, and I'm curious if y'all agree with me. I think there was some knee-jerk reactions of jobs going away. And of course, there were companies that were conveniently laying people off because, yeah, really, we noticed who you were, brands, but whatever. But at the same time, I think there was a lot of knee-jerk reactions that happened. And there are some brands that are regretting what they did, getting rid of comms team, marketing team, content teams and stuff. I see regret happening now. And because the reality is AI is going to work best when we work with it as human beings, which I get that. And we are watching brands. So please stop being stupid because we know what you're doing. And it's just so important that we humanize these topics. And so I just hope that more people will begin to have these types of conversations. And so I was just wondering if you went, what your thoughts are on that as well. Because I don't think as many jobs are going to go away as we're predicting, but I think there's going to be some interesting ones open up. And also, bottom line, by God, can we start training people with disabilities to do these jobs that are available and marketable? So, okay, now I need to be quiet. So, okay, you go, Jourdan.
Yeah, no, you brought up some really good points. I think it's just I think it's limitless in terms of like how we can utilize this AI to be. It's just a matter of the angle in which that we're approaching it. So even you talk about like finding new jobs and opportunities. I think it's awesome. Like AI can help be able to do that, but you have to input the information. That's like the huge thing. And I'm talking specifically about like generative AI right now. So generative AI is based off of entering prompts, and then you're receiving human like text or images, any information related to whatever you're asking it. But that's all based off of input data, and it's generating the information and content by using learned patterns. So what are the patterns? What is the data that we have existing? What is the information that's being inputted? Because at some point with generative AI, the prompts, you're not going to be having prompts anymore. It's just, okay, now everything's being trained. Now this is further down the line, of course, but so I think we need to be thinking about things like that. So when we're talking about jobs, I could think of, creating models or different jobs that maybe are not like dishwasher or, creating other jobs and training programs and setting up the technology to have this pipeline as well as sustaining. Someone can get a job with that has a disability, but what about sustaining and being able to provide the support that is needed? Because a lot of times maybe someone gets the job, but then 2 months later they're not performing but a lot of times it's maybe they're not providing the accommodations needed, or there could be a number of different reasons. But I think that's important as well. Creating the jobs, helping to find the jobs, sustaining the jobs as well, putting things in place. And then measuring. I think if we look at a lot of data previously, a lot of the things surrounding accessibility are still very manual. But so I think it's still going to be that way. So you still need humans involved in this process and to be able to work with the technology. I think we're always going to be relevant in some way because of the fact we have to work with the technology to train it. But if we're not training it or inputting in new information or information that's not there, then it's just going to be like we're repeating the same patterns and excluding people with disabilities. As well as we need to be able to have measuring tools, right? Like, so if someone goes on the job, are they being measured in terms of, not measured in terms of performance, but like support? Like, there's not a lot of, when you look at data, a lot of the data is based off of, okay, this company's, search this many websites, or this company track maybe like 10 people, or the sample sizes are not very diverse, they may have taken one type of disability. So I think that's going to be important as well to be able to measure, because the other piece is like, not everyone wants to self-report. So I'm just kind of looking forward. The numbers may decrease in terms of when we look at census data and things of that nature, because a lot of companies will base it, oh, well, there's not that many people with disabilities, or there's not this, but so that's a lot of the things that I'm looking at is like, how do we set up a system where people feel comfortable enough where they're feeling supported to be able to like feel comfortable self-reporting, where they're not going to feel like they're going to lose their job tomorrow because they stated that they had a specific type of disability, and where the numbers are going to decrease because people don't want to report, or if they don't have to, if let's say someone has an invisible disability, or, so there's all these different things, but measurement is going to be huge, I think, because that's what companies are basing. They shouldn't only base it on that, but that's what's happening. And there's not a lot of strong data to support a lot of different information that's happening. So I think we can really utilize AI to be able to create some strong measurement tools, and also to be able to create accountability, and also have the space where people feel that they're being heard, and that these companies are being accounted for, or being held accountable as well. So very long-winded answer, but I think there's a lot of great opportunities, and I see this as like a really positive thing, like in terms of going forward, where we can do better.
I agree. There's a lot of data that's needed, but I would also say, and then I'll turn it over to Neil or Antonio, but there is a lot of data. There's a lot of training that needs to be done. And we all need to, I believe, join the AI conversations to be learning ourselves, but also training. So there's a lot of data that needs to be learned. But I have a feeling the way we're using some of this data now, and even some of the examples you used, Jourdan, I think it's going to be shifting quite dramatically on what we're really going to be looking about when it comes to whether or not corporations are really meaningfully including people. So I think there's a lot that's going to come out of this. But Antonio, let me turn it over to you.
Over the last couple of weeks, we assisted to a large number of pledges on AI. From the G7 to the UK government, even to the White House. Everyone is making a pledge. Everyone is coming with a charter that in some case, and then you get this on the news and people are, wow, what's going on here? So, and then we had all this drama that took place at OpenAI with, a board firing the founder, and then the founder coming back, and then people claiming, oh, we need government to come up with policies because apparently companies are not ready to take the charge and make it happen. So it's complicated. So what specific policies and standards can governments implement to ensure that AI tools are accessible and don't really discriminate against people with disabilities? Because now everyone is jumping into AI. You talk with the startup, oh, we have this AI solution. You talk with everyone is bringing AI solution to market. So how can we make sure that they don't discriminate?
Yeah, that's a hard question. From my perspective, I would say that, I see it as there has to be like some type of, there's, the website accessibility guidelines, but I think there has to be more in the sense of like, when I was talking about accountability. So like, let's say, for example, I know when you add an app to the app store, it's not just getting added immediately. There's a certain list of protocols you have to go through before you get approved to be able to get your app added. So I think there has to be some type of approval process based in, like a standard that's being upheld in some way before it goes to market in terms of a lot of the technology. Existing technology, it's a little bit harder right now just because there's so many different moving pieces with that. But I think by implementing a best practice and standard protocol that is very uniform and everyone has to follow, I think that would be a way to be able to do better because of the fact then you have a process that's going across the board, because right now everything is very like piecemealed in terms of like, okay, well, I have great color contrast on our, or we have a accessibility statement, but it's kind of like different pieces to like kind of buy time. And I hate to use that phrase, but that's what it feels like in terms of when you're just looking at a lot of the conversation, because it's like there's so many different pieces when we talk about accessibility, and it's when you look at anything surrounding like technology, building it out, all of these different pieces, as well as you have to be able to maintain it. You may come up to compliance, or you may have an accessible website or an accessible app, but then like if your whole developer team, let's say, gets fired tomorrow, the new developers that come on, do you have a strong protocol in place where those new developers that come on are going to know like where to pick up? And that's what I see is a lot is happening. It's a lot of different moving pieces. So yeah, I would say that would be one way that I could think of.
And Jourdan, let me just make a statement, because I believe, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but we already have all those legislations and all those standards in place. So if any company is building any product using AI and they're not following the laws of the land and the standards we already have in place, because AI is not new. All of this stuff is already accounted for in our legislations and standards. So I believe the laws of the land are already state that these things have to be accessible. Maybe we need additional legislation, but I believe any of the brands, we believe, and I believe the lawyers are siding with us on this. You need to follow our current standards and laws, which AI is in there. They're not going to say, oh, no, that's different. They can't do what they did to us with the internet. So a lot of this isn't new technology. This stuff you were already supposed to make this stuff accessible. So I just want to real quick come in and say, any brand that's trying to do that, you're going to get in trouble. So excuse me. Neil, I don't know if you wanted to come in here, but yeah, we have laws that address this.
I think, yes, we do have laws that address the accessibility of stuff, but what Jourdan was saying was right. There is this whole move fast and break things mentality creeping back in, because the large organizations and the large corporates are in fierce competition, because we're at that point in a new technology cycle where everybody's wanting to be the leader in that technology, which comes around once every few decades. And the last big one, which is not as big as AI, was really around social and on all of this stuff. And before that, the big transformative one was the internet. I think AI is probably bigger than both in terms of the long-term impact that it's going to have in terms of how it transforms what we do and how we do it and so on. So there's an awful lot up for grabs, and these organizations know that. They're throwing money at it. They're wanting to do stuff fast. We now apparently have a pause, but that was only because of the sort of boardroom shenanigans, if we like. But there are definitely the two different sort of viewpoints on this. One is we just need to get it out there and play. And the other is actually, let's be cautious, let's design it properly. I'm, of the opinion that this stuff is so powerful that we ought to be designing it properly, have humans in the loop, including disabled humans in the loop right from the beginning. Because the whole way that sort of conversational AI works is it puts together something that's plausible, but it may not be true, right? So, and the risk we have in terms of misinformation and then misinforming people and the impact of that on society is not AI. We're not going to have Skynet, right? It's not going to be like the Terminator. But what we may have is humans doing stuff to other humans because they believe stuff that has been created by AI or that is believable misinformation. And I'm not just talking about deep fakes here, but the more the AI ingests content that has been created by other AIs that has created somewhat plausible, somewhat fact-based, but not entirely true content, the worse the problem gets. So there is an element of need for caution in all of this stuff. And I'm not necessarily seeing that. So I see huge potential benefits in how you can use AI for specific assistive technologies, right? You know, talking about the fact that if I need to compose some text right now, I can get ChatGPT to give me a first draft. But I need to revise that first draft. I need to be the human in the loop, and if you don't know enough about the topic, it seems plausible, and you don't edit it, and it gets published on the internet, the AIs will use that material. So we create a system of pollution where we're essentially continuing to ingest material and reference material that's not truthful. So I think that we need to be mindful about how we use it. Did I spout too much?
No, it's great.
It's true. Right.
I would like to introduce a new topic that relates with the fact that AI and generative AI is also making a lot of entrepreneurs to bring up new solutions, in some cases addressing accessibility and focusing on trying to solve problems for people with disabilities without engaging with the community. I know I can fix subtitles, I can fix alt text. So how can we create collaboration between technology developers, people with disabilities to make relevant and practical AI solutions?
Yeah, that's a big one. I saw that a lot at a few recent conferences I went to. I definitely think, I think it's a very challenging question to answer, because I know I'm like, it's easy. Like, why can't you just like collaborate and and reach out and have, even, if people with different disabilities want to be a part of the team, like hiring them in a role to be able to, if they want to be in like that leadership role to help with developing, and then also, being able to help develop the technology. So I do. I think it's just more, collaboration, more streamlining in terms of having, like, there's a lot of, I feel like, of information, and there's a lot of different resources, and there's a lot of different groups, and so sometimes I think, I'll flip to the other side. I think that people don't know how to be able to integrate, or like where to start in terms of when they're collaborating or when they're trying to find user testers. I know that sounds like, well, is that not possible? But I think when it comes to, a lot of times I see, if companies do reach out, they're reaching out to only maybe one type of like user group. So maybe like reaching out to maybe individuals that are blind, or maybe if someone has a certain type of someone is a wheelchair user or something like that. So I think it really just has to, a lot of times I think it's going to take to like reaching out to some of these organizations and saying, because I even think of Google or the speech to text. Now they're collaborating with like, I think it's called revolutionize. I think they changed it, but they're collaborating with like different people with different types of speech patterns to help with the speech to text. So it's understanding a lot of the technology, because to your point, there's like captions, automated captions, alt texting form, but it's not including anybody with different types of disabilities. It's just like, oh, we can do this for the podcast, or we can do this for, this use case. But I see a really great opportunities too, like in emergency planning, in terms of with AI. I see great opportunities, of course, in like employment and hiring. I mean, there's a lot of, I feel like, big opportunities. I even see teams being able to hire to be able to input the information surrounding accessibility into the large language models, so that we have like the information in, because there's not back to what we're saying, there's not a lot of the data when you ask certain questions. It's either like, it's not in the general, it's based off of like my one conversation, or they have to, if I'm asking through a prompt, it has to like know that it knows I'm passionate about accessibility. So they're going to include that in my answer. Whereas if I talk nothing about accessibility, it's just going to be like, not going to say anything about it. Yeah. So I think it's just like really being able to collaborate to, I think, work together, bringing everyone together to be able to provide the resources to be able to have that.
So on one of a reason why I ask that is also related to the fact that some people in some parts of the world, that they can be really good at mastering and getting funds from investors. Okay, and we know that in the VC world, there's a huge lack of diversity about who gets the funding. So how can we turn this around, where people with disabilities have more opportunities within the VC community to build solutions that they need for their community? How can we trying to, I know that we're not going to be able to find the solution here, but at least I think it's an important discussion that needs to happen.
Yeah, I definitely coming together, like collaborating and then partnering. I definitely think that's like going to be a huge thing, is coming together, partnering and bridging, because a lot of times if we're in one space, then I think we just building like a little bit more aggressive. I think we're already aggressive, I feel like, now, and I don't mean like, run people over or anything like that, but just like coming together and pushing more. Yeah. And it kind of, collectively coming together and collaborating.
So I think we definitely need to make our voices heard. I do take some solace in the fact that large software vendors, like Microsoft, there are plenty of others as well, but are starting to use AI in such a way that if you want to create a document, it ends up more accessible by default, because it's doing things like creating structure and headings and all of this kind of stuff. But I think that I watched a really great demo about 6 months ago as part of a podcast I was participating in by Crystal Preston Waters, who was using different large language models to create websites and using different prompts to create the websites. And she was having to go to a great level of detail, saying, acting as an accessibility coding developer that is wishing to create a website with CSS and JavaScript to conformance level AA, create me a web page with a form on it, rather than create me a web page with a form on it and it being accessible by default, right? And so we need to get to that point where these models shouldn't be creating stuff that is inaccessible, because the standards are known and the people that are making these things can reference these standards and they can point to them. It actually wouldn't take much to point to clear reference material in design to enable people without the knowledge of how to prompt and what to prompt for to use these tools to create accessible things instead of perpetuating inaccessibility. Look, I want to thank you for coming back and joining us, especially given that we've been doing this over Thanksgiving period. So thank you, give you thanks, and we also need to give thanks for our sponsors and supporters, Amazon and MyClearText, for helping keep us on air, keeping us fresh, keeping us captioned. So looking forward to you being part of the conversation again on social media. So thank you, Jourdan.
Thank you for having me.